All of a sudden, Auburn has now lost 2 in a row while the Blue Devils just keep on rolling. Andy Patton, we got a new number 1 overall.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. Woo, less than a week till Selection Sunday. Let's go! We are your hosts. This is Andy Patton. I'm Isaac Schade. You're joining us at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. Thanks so much for making us your first listen or watch of the day. Happy Monday to all of you. We want to remind you can catch every episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Special shout out to all the everydayers and all the members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord, which you can join right now. You got to do it. Links in the show notes. Coming up on the show today, Andy, we're going to have some Bubble Watch winners and losers of the weekend, and we're getting to know a lot about who's winning and losing and getting to where they're going. We'll make dark horse predictions for the 5 power conference tournaments coming up later this week. And we're going to start with some 1-seed conversations, both number 1 overall and just the overall, the 4 1-seeds. By the way, there was no Saturday game night this week. And so apologies for that. It just didn't work for our schedules. Andy and I's daughters have the same birthday, and it was Saturday. We can't be getting out on that, Andy. And so we all had stuff going on, so no good there. Andy Patton, 5 tickets punched already. On Saturday, the very first one, Ohio Valley, SIU, Edwardsville. Ever. Congrats. Big South on Sunday. High Point came down from 15 in the second half to win and punch their first ever ticket. In the Summit League, it's still going right now, but we already know who's going to win because St. Paul's, Minnesota, is not eligible yet. They got 1 more year. So Omaha, win, lose, or draw in this game. That'd be funny if they tied, is going to go to the tournament. That's 3 teams with their first ever trip. Congrats to them. In the A-Sun, Lipscomb clinches over North Alabama 76-65. And in the Missouri Valley Conference, Drake wins over Bradley 63-48. Sigh of relief for bubble teams because there was some potential bid thievery there. Drake's got a decent at-large resume. Andy, as you said, the world is about to learn Bennett shirts. Very, very quickly, folks. 1 week from now, Andy and I will be meeting each other in person for the first time ever. Can't really say why yet. But you could probably guess because, you know what's going on next weekend. And so anyway, we're just really excited about that and we can't wait. All right, Andy, let's dive into this. We got so much to get to. I want to know what the most important result of the weekend was because there was a ton of them. On Friday, I sat here on our show and I said, Andy, Auburn just lost their last game. They could lose this game against Alabama Saturday and lose their first SEC tournament game and still be number 1 overall. Well, apparently Bruce Pearl's squad was listening and they're putting us to the test because they went out and lost on a buzzer beater by Mark Sears in overtime on Saturday in Auburn. Andy Patton, are the Auburn Tigers still number 1 overall or is it now Duke?
Yeah, I think that the Auburn's still number 1. And I think the only way that it would have really changed is if Auburn had gotten really badly beaten in this game, which felt very unlikely to happen. The fact that they lost an overtime game that required a game-winning shot from, and one of the best players in college basketball, an All-American, a candidate for the Bob Cousy Award in Mark Sears. It doesn't necessarily matter who made the shot, but it's just the kind of loss that I don't think moves the needle in a super negative way for Auburn. So yeah, this didn't change my feelings about that. Obviously Duke went out and won their game against North Carolina, a game that they were expected to win, a game against a team that hasn't been as good as people expected them to be in North Carolina. And North Carolina put up a good fight. It wasn't an absolute blowout from Duke by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a comfortable win for Duke, and Houston got a win. And really, we'll go down here in a little bit and kind of talk about the top 2 seeds, but pretty much everybody won with the exception of Auburn in that situation. But Auburn's loss was so close that I just don't. I mean, they're still. I know they're now number 2 in the net. Duke's at number 1. Auburn's at number 2. But Auburn has literally 9 more quad 1 wins than Duke. More than twice as many quad 1 wins as Duke. They only have 1 more quad 1 loss. Duke has 3. Auburn has 4. I just still think Auburn has the best resume in college basketball. I think they deserve to be the number one overall seed. I will say that I think that this result puts a little bit more pressure on Auburn. I think that they're in a position where your statement from Friday, they can lose the first game in the SEC tournament as well as this game to Bama and still get a number one overall seed, is probably still true. But I think there's a little bit more pressure on them to win that first game in the SEC tournament because, again, as a team that's in the, they're getting the bye, they're going to play a really good team in their first game. And if they lose that game, carrying a couple of losses in a row into the NCAA tournament, I don't know. I don't have the data in front of me, but I suspect that there are not a lot of teams that have earned the number one overall seed who are on a 2-game losing streak. I just bet it doesn't happen all that often.
Well, you know why, Andy? Because we also haven't had a whole bunch of teams who have had the year that Auburn has had before this. I mean, it's like ridiculous what they've done. No, I love the way you said all that there. And I think it's both an eye test thing and, more importantly, a resume test thing that Auburn's resume in totality is still ahead of Duke and everyone else, but critically Duke. Now, Andy, the other side of this game that we need to get to is the rest of the one seed conversation, because Bama, unfortunately for them, has had this, as we've talked about quite a bit, ridiculous slate at the end of the season. Tennessee and then Florida and then Auburn, two of which the bookends on the road, the Florida game in between at home. I mean, it's crazy stuff. They lose the first two of those, get this win. Is it enough to put them back? I'm not going to say in the one seed conversation because obviously they're there. I'm going to say back in one seed territory. And would you say, Andy, coming into the weekend, just to set it, we had Auburn, Duke, Houston, Florida in that order as the ones?
Yeah, that's what I had. That's the order that I had as the number one seeds coming into this game. And I think for Alabama, like if you told us that Bama goes 1-2 in that 3-game stretch, I do think the win at Auburn, I mean, it's from a resume perspective, it is the most impressive. It's a road game against the number one team. Like that is the best win. But I think Auburn kind of needed to go 2-1. I mean, the fact that the games that they were playing in this stretch were literally against, Bama. Yeah, the team that they're playing were literally the team that they're competing for a one spot against. Like losing to two of those teams is just really, really brutal for the Crimson Tide. So I think that they're probably still just on the outside of that conversation at this point. I think, Florida picked up a 19-point win over Ole Miss. Is it as impressive as beating Auburn at home? No. But for Florida, you couldn't have asked them to do much better. That's a very comfortable win over a very good team. And so for me, like Florida, like Bama maybe did enough in some situations where you'd move a team like that into the one line. Beating a team like Auburn is huge, but Florida didn't do enough to lose that spot. And so for me, Florida's still in that conversation. The great news, the SEC tournament's going to really help us bear this out with Auburn, with Bama, with Florida, with Tennessee, who we haven't talked much about, but they're obviously still in that mix as well. We're going to learn a lot about these teams in the SEC tournament, and we're going to have a much better sense of how this should shake out.
Andy, as we talk, Lunardi has been updating his bracket throughout Sunday afternoon. The others have as well. But right now, as we talk, it is Bama and Tennessee as two of those 2 seeds, along with Michigan State, who had a nice victory over Michigan at home to put Michigan, by the way, on a 3-game losing streak. And Michigan State is just doing work. And then the other 2 seed, Texas Tech. How about them Red Raiders? But Andy, my question is, not only did we have that crazy buzzer beating end from Mark Sears in overtime, but St. John's did the same with Zuby Ejiofor, doing the same at against Marquette to close the regular season. And so, Andy, while St. John's is not right now a 2 seed, at least for Joe Lunardi, do you think with what they've done here in the Big East stretch and slate, matched and paired with a Big East tournament title, is that enough to get them to the 2 line?
Yeah, I think it would be. I think if they were to run through, I mean, again, the Big 12 is stronger than the Big East. And so for Texas Tech, obviously the ability to win some really key matchups in the Big 12 tournament could really help them. But St. John's got a ton of momentum right now. That is a really nice win over Marquette. Shout out to my guy, Zuby Ejiofor. It was an incredible shot off that incredible offensive rebound by St. John's. And then Zuby hits that shot to give them the W. That was fantastic. I do think St. John's has a lot of legs towards a potential 2 seed. I think Texas Tech is a team that could be vulnerable to a loss. We've seen them do some really incredible stuff and win some games down players, which has been very impressive for Coach Grant McCaslin's team. But my suspicion is that St. John's will win the Big East tournament. I think they're in a position to do so. They're the best. They're playing the best right now. They're the best team in the conference. And I think you pick up wins along the way against some of the teams that you're going to face in that tournament. I think that's again, if both them and Texas Tech win their respective tournaments, Tech's going to probably hold on to that spot, and justifiably so. But I feel more confident about St. John's winning the Big East than I do about Tech winning the Big 12. And I think that could be the difference maker in who gets one of those 2 seeds.
And looking at the other projected 3 seeds right now, I don't really see anybody else who's much of a threat to move up to the 2 line. The others are Kentucky, Iowa State, and Texas A&M. Iowa State, unfortunately, has just had too many losses. They're due to the injuries, absolutely, but still, it is what it is there. Kentucky, same with injuries. I know they had a nice win over the weekend. Hopefully we'll get a little time for that later. But I just don't see them able to scoot up, nor A&M. Although I guess A&M would maybe be the top of that. But I think St. John's is the 3 seed right now that would most challenge for it too. Agreed?
Yeah, I think so as well. I don't see it with Kentucky with the injuries and everything. And yeah, I think A&M is in a rough spot. I think St. John's is the team most likely to make that jump. And the Big Ten teams, Michigan State obviously has been playing some fantastic basketball, and I think they're going to sit on that 2 line. I don't think they're going anywhere. So I don't think there's a lot of 2 seeds that are really up for grabs too much at this point. Like, I think a lot of them are fairly well secured. But I am very curious to see St. John's and Texas Tech and kind of how that battle shakes out for one of those spots. But I think the other ones are fairly well secure. And I don't see a lot of 3 seeds making a ton of movement at this point.
No.
All right, folks. We got some bubble stuff to talk about because the bubble is in an incredible spot right now. We saw some big time wins, Arkansas and Colorado State in particular, huge bubble victories, while folks, Nebraska, not only did their bubble hopes take a huge hit, but so did their conference tournament hopes. We're going to talk about that. Everything crumbled for Fred Hoiberg in Nebraska. We're going to get to that in just a second. But first, folks, get the supplies that you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product information to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. And if you need help with an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always be able to talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks at a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, so now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com.
This episode is also brought to you by our good friends at Wayfair. Look, your home should reflect your style, and with Wayfair, it's easier than ever to make that happen. Whether you're looking for a simple refresh or tackling a big home project, man, Wayfair has everything you need all in one place. Their huge selection makes it easy to find the perfect piece no matter your space or budget. From cozy furniture and stylish decor to kitchen essentials and outdoor must-haves, Wayfair has it all. And all at prices, I think importantly, that fit your budget. Honestly, Andy, I was really surprised to find when I started looking at Wayfair, it's not just like living room furniture. I thought it was like that kind of vibe, but really Wayfair's got everything. Go to, I really think, for everything I need to outfit my house. I also love that Wayfair's site makes it really easy to compare different styles because, y'all, honestly, I have so much trouble choosing and picking between stuff. Plus, your order arrives fast, and even better, that delivery is free. Head on over to wayfair.com and find something that's just your style today. That's wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Andy, we've had the opportunity to do this for most of the last several Mondays here recently, and I think it's a lot of fun. I'm glad we're back to it today. Bubble winners and bubble losers of the weekend. We're going to start in the winners column because we like to be happy. We like to talk about things that are good and don't like to talk about things that are sad. Andy, I want to name off several of the bubble winners from over the weekend. And, there are certainly some others, but these are the critical ones in our opinion. I want to start way back on Friday night. We had Colorado State beating Boise State. It was a double bubble situation in the Mountain West Conference. Andy, I'm going to let you take your victory lap on that one here in just a second. Arkansas over 25 Mississippi State, 93-92, close one. Indiana beating Ohio State 66-60 in another dub-bub situation. We had San Diego State thrashing Nevada 80-61. Oklahoma beating Texas in what was a double bubble game, might now not so much be. And I also want to mention Dayton beating VCU 79-76. And we'll look at that. I don't know if we're so bubbly there. I'm still, we don't always agree with our buddy Joe Lunardi. But Andy, out of these 6 bubble winners, what do you want to point out?
Yeah, I think the Colorado State game was such a fun basketball game for starters. It was a double bubble game between Colorado State and Boise State, and the Rams get their 7th win in a row. Huge push at the end of the season for Nico Medved's club. And we talked about this game on Friday's show, and we talked about Nick Clifford in particular, their starting guard, who's just tremendously talented, versatile player, kind of can play multiple positions. And he came out and had a monster game, particularly in the second half. He finished this thing with a career high 36 points. He downed the Broncos in this game and really is the reason that Colorado State's bubble hopes remain alive. They moved up, according to Lunardi, into the next 4 out conversation. They've still got some work to do, but they have a ton of momentum going into the Mountain West Conference tournament. This is a team that I think has a real chance of earning like a play-in 11 seed type bid, and is not going to be a team that, whether it's Arkansas or Oklahoma or whoever is, they're not going to want to see them next to them in that play-in game, because this team is playing some really, really good basketball right now.
Yeah, and I mean that's part of why teams get into the bubble, is because they're going hot. We know the committee doesn't necessarily consider the last 10 or whatever in the same way that they used to, but still teams get into this position a la BYU because they're playing really good basketball right now, and BYU has played themselves just right on off of that bubble. Andy, speaking of playing right on off of that bubble in a good way, what about the bad? Like, I think Oklahoma has maybe put themselves in a good position. I did not think they would. Same with Indiana. And both of those in our 2 other double bubble games, I feel like Indiana and Oklahoma might be in great shape right now. Ohio State and Texas, much less so. Where are you at on those guys?
Yeah, I think those were important games for those teams, and we kind of knew that 2 of those 4 teams were going to come out feeling a lot better, and that's the case we're in here. Indiana is a team that, I didn't see this coming a month or so ago, but they've strung together enough good wins here and avoided any catastrophic losses that, an overall look at the resume puts them in a position where, I think they do deserve. We'll see how they do in the Big Ten tournament, and obviously, they're in a position now where there's not really any bad losses they could take in the Big Ten tournament, but you'd like to at least win 1 game. I think if you do that, you probably feel pretty comfortable if you're a Hoosiers fan, at least about getting into the tournament. And if you win a couple games, or if you win that first game by enough points, maybe you start to feel like, maybe we'll actually get a 10 seed instead of being in a play-in game situation. So I really liked what we saw from Indiana. I think this is a big time problem for Ohio State on the other side of this. I think they needed this one probably even more than Indiana did, and they weren't able to pick it up. They've been kind of reeling as of late, and I think that's a problem for the Buckeyes in terms of putting a lot more pressure on them in the Big Ten tournament. And I think you're spot on about Oklahoma as well. I've been kind of hesitant about their resume. I know they were so great in the non-conference, but their conference record is just so bad. But that's the state of affairs in the SEC. There's just so many good teams that somebody's bound to have a resume that stacks up fairly well against other bubble teams, despite having a horrendous record in conference play. And again, a win over Texas was needed. It wasn't a blowout, but it was a comfortable win. They got it done. Texas now finds themselves in a position where if the tournament were to start right now, I don't think they would be in, and I don't think they would deserve to be in. The good news for both Oklahoma and Texas is you got more opportunities. The SEC tournament, you're not really facing any bad teams, so you get a chance to go get another potential win or 2. And if either of these teams win 2 games in the SEC tournament, they're in, guaranteed. I think for Oklahoma, you probably just need to win 1. Even if you don't win 1, maybe you can sneak in. But Texas, a little bit more pressure on Rodney Terry and the Longhorns right now.
Yeah, gosh, a lot of pressure on Rodney Terry. And I mean, literally, LSU and South Carolina are the only 2 SEC games that are not a quad 1 on a neutral right now. I mean, that's what we're talking about as we look at it in real time. With Ohio State, look, I can't figure it out. Lunardi has them as the second team in last 4 in, so playing in Dayton. Dude, they got 14 losses this season, right? Like at some point, I know the numbers are what the numbers are, but the losses are what the losses are. And I've got trouble getting past that, I guess I'm saying.
Yeah, it's 11 of their 14 losses are quad one, and the other 3 are quad two. So, like, fine. And they have 6 quad one wins. Like, I do get it, but I'm just, again, 14 losses is a lot. And at some point, and I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I was going to say at some point it has to matter. It does, because most teams that have 6 quad one wins and are 36th in the net are not on the bubble. So they are factoring in the fact that this team has 14 losses. But it feels to me like this is a team where, just from an eye test perspective and from just the basics, like, if this team can't win a game in the Big Ten tournament, they have 15 losses, they don't make any noise in their conference tournament, it's tough for me to rationalize them getting a spot, even in a year, like, as we say so often, where the bubble, a lot of teams are kind of in a similar boat to Ohio State. But I'm not really there with them right now. I think this Indiana win, if they'd gotten it, would have helped them quite a bit, but we'll see what they do in the conference tournament.
Yeah. I mean, unless it's not even just winning a game in the Big Ten tournament. If they don't win the championship, they have 15 losses. I mean, it's crazy.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
Crazy. All right, bubble losers, Andy. We had Boise State on the backside of that Colorado State game. We already talked about that. Texas on the backside of that Oklahoma game. And then we mentioned it in the first segment, but in the ACC, we had a couple. Duke beats North Carolina. The Tar Heels had a 7-point lead at one point, but Duke just said, you know what? We just remembered we have one of the most elite defenses in the nation, and we're the tallest team in the nation, and so we're going to shut your water off. And then Duke ends up running away with this thing. Elsewhere, SMU loses to Florida State 76-69. This is a catastrophic loss for SMU. Similarly, Nebraska.
Yeah.
Andy, I'm just struggling to get these words out. They fall at home to Iowa, 83-68. They end their regular season losing 5 straight and 6 of 7. 4 of those 6 losses at home, Andy. Yeah. I'm pained. I'm grieved by the emotion of games like this. Jawan Gary fouls out of the game with 24 points, hugs every Iowa player that's on the floor as he walks off, and then a long embrace with Coach Hoiberg. Coach Hoiberg. Hoiberg is so tough to say, Andy. Good grief. March Madness is here. But here's the thing for Nebraska, Andy. Not only have they near certainly played themselves out of bubble contention, they failed to make the Big Ten tournament, Andy. They cannot help their cause anymore, other than to say, at least we're not going to lose again. What do you think?
Yeah, it's crazy. The Big Ten and the ACC, both conferences that set their conference tournament at 15 teams, despite having more than 15 teams in the league. It was an opportunity. I think what they wanted to do was prevent their 9-seeded teams who they view as potential bubble teams. And in the Big Ten, it's not even a bubble team, but they wanted to avoid them picking up early losses. So like, okay, we'll give you a bye and we can set it up that way. And unfortunately, what they didn't realize, what the Big Ten did not account for, is that a team that finishes that low in the regular season standings, in this case with Nebraska, they finished with a 7-13 conference record, tied with 4 other schools.
That's what we said. Yeah.
Yeah. And Nebraska just didn't have any of the tiebreakers. So they end up not making their conference tournament, despite being a team that, had they won a game or two in the conference tournament, could have very realistically played their way onto the bubble, or played their way into the tournament off of the bubble. And instead, now they're left out of the field. And it's going to be hard for any committee member to look at a team that didn't make a 15-team conference tournament and say that team deserves to be in the field. So I think, frankly, the Big Ten really, and I don't blame them, but this decision, this planning, really hurt Nebraska. I think it almost certainly, and again, Nebraska didn't need to lose 6 of their last 7 games. Like, they did it to themselves to be in this position, but not getting a chance to play in the conference tournament where they could have potentially put themselves in the field is got to be a tough pill to swallow for Hoiberg and the Cornhuskers.
And I got no space, no time, no room for this. We can't be having our 9 seed play the 16. If you can't beat the 16, what are we talking about? Man? Anyway, that's directed at both the SEC and ACC. Andy, keep us going here. I don't want to get all hot and bothered.
Well, since we're talking about conference tournament brackets, we're going to talk about the Power Four. All of their brackets are now out. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at teams outside of the top 4 in terms of the seeding, who we think could make a run, win their conference tournament, get March Madness started off with a bang. We're going to get to those teams in just a second. But first, folks, March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who you want cutting down the nets. On FanDuel, when you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around. With tournament games happening almost every single day, there's always some exciting action to get in on. We're going to talk all of the conference tournaments for the Power Conference, but SEC, the odds right now, Auburn, of course, in the lead at plus 150, Florida next at plus 320, Alabama after that at plus 370, Tennessee at plus 500. Folks, there is a very large gap after that for who might win the SEC tournament. We're going to talk about some of those teams here in just a second. But folks, if you want to get in on that action or any other March Madness action, just visit FanDuel.com to get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, Isaac, closing out the show, having a conversation here. We now know the brackets for every conference in college basketball. We certainly know them for the power conferences. And so what we want to do is kind of take a look at the actual seeding, how the bracket's shaking out, and kind of make our predictions on who are some teams that we think could make a run, win a conference tournament. I don't know if there's going to be an NC State this year, which, by the way, Kevin Keats, we thought it might happen. Apologies. What a run last year. He's out as the NC State head coach. But is there going to be another run?
We literally can't get NC State doing it again because they didn't make the ACC.
Right. NC State, they are not in the picture. We already talked about Nebraska. They're not in the picture. Handful of teams that are not in the picture there. Jai Lucas taking over at Miami. He's not going to make a run either. They're not in the ACC tournament. But of the teams that are, and of the teams that are not seeded in the top four of their respective tournaments, let's talk about some teams that we think in that mix could make a run. We'll start with the SEC. Isaac, obviously this is an incredibly loaded conference. I'm asking you to pick a team that you think could win a conference tournament that's not Auburn, Florida, Alabama, or Tennessee. That is a ridiculous ask. Who are you going with?
Why, Andy? Why are you doing this to me? There's no way.
I got to do it too.
Can you imagine if that was the offensive line for Greg Sankey? It's like no one's sacking him, right? Like anyway, what's funny is I'm going to go outside even the double buys here. I'm going to go to 9 through 16, which thank you, SEC. I know you've only got 16 teams, but thank you for keeping them all in. I'm going number 9, Arkansas, right? Mm-hmm. We wondered a lot, like, unfortunately they lose Boogie, and it's like, I almost said Boogie Ellis. That's a flashback to last year. They lost Boogie Fland, and it's like, well, is there any world in which they could get better? And the answer, it turns out, seems to be yeah. As often happens with Calipari teams, they're better. Of those teams 5 through 8, I don't feel comfortable with multiple of them. And I'll specifically say Kentucky because of injuries specific to Jackson Robinson, right? And so, I think Arkansas is getting some things going here, and I'm going to go with the Hogs.
Yeah, I thought long and hard about picking Arkansas. They were the only team really in that 9 through 16 range that I gave some serious consideration to. I'm actually going to go, though, with A&M, who's number 5. I know picking the highest ranked team almost feels like cheating, but A&M is a team that when they're hot, when they're shooting well, they can beat anybody. We've seen that this year. This is also a team that I think is they're going to play the winner of Texas Vanderbilt between those two teams. If you told me A&M lost to either of those teams, I wouldn't be that surprised. But A&M also could win that game, could beat Tennessee, and could take a run at Auburn. Like, they're absolutely capable of doing that. Buzz Williams has this team. They're tenacious on the glass. They're physical when Zurich Phelps is playing well, and, of course, Wade Taylor IV. Like, I think this is a team that, more than anybody else in that mix, especially a not fully healthy Kentucky team, like you said, I think A&M has the ability to do this more than anybody else. But it's this, of all the conferences we're about to talk about, it's really hard to not pick a team in the top 4 here, because those 4 teams are, again, all of them are in the mix for number 1 overall seeds for a reason.
It's funny, Andy, as deep as the SEC is, it is our next 2 conference tournaments that I think I'm actually the most excited about. The first of which is the Big Ten, Andy. Yeah. The top 4 seeds who are out of bounds are 1 Michigan State, 2 Maryland, 3 Michigan, and 4 UCLA. Outside of that top 4, who are you picking?
Yeah, I went with Purdue at number 6, and I told you before we hit the record button that the next 4 teams outside of the top 4, I almost feel like more confident about, because you have Wisconsin, you have Purdue, you have Illinois, you have Oregon. Like, all of those teams could do it. Like, I really do believe that all those teams are capable of getting it done. That's what makes this conference and this conference tournament coming up so fun. But I'm going with Purdue. They're at plus 650 according to FanDuel. Trey Kaufman-Renn and Braden Smith are just two of the best players in the country. I mean, TKR is one of the best centers in the country. Braden Smith, very, very arguably the best point guard in the country. I think the depth is definitely an issue for this team. Leaf said this on a recent episode that this team, when Fletcher Lawyer is playing great, is really, really good, but they're really reliant on him being the third scorer. And when he's not having a good game or just kind of absent, they don't have somebody to step up consistently. And I think that hurts them. But if this is a team that's experienced, they have literal NCAA tournament championship experience. Matt Painter's a great coach. They have an older backcourt. Like a lot of the things that you look for in teams that you think could make deep runs, this team has. And in a Big Ten, where I think that a lot of the teams they're going to face, are either younger or don't have that level of experience, I think Purdue could make a run.
Andy, I like it. And also I think number 9 as well, Indiana. I don't think we would have said this a while ago. You were talking about it in our bubble conversation. It's just like the way they have solidified who they are post the Mike Woodson announcement. It's just been pretty crazy. Andy, the team I'm going with is right there close to yours. Give me the Illinois Illini, the Fighting Illini of Brad Underwood. I think this is my team that I really like. We've said multiple times this season, they potentially have the highest ceiling in the Big Ten. They, similar to what Iowa State has dealt with this year, has dealt with injury issues. But, man, it seems like they're back healthy. They've gotten past that flu bug. And, led by Kasparas Yakichonis, I think he's going to be one of the big names. When we get to March here to the tournament anyway, it's going to be learn Yakichonis season, people, because, my goodness. But they're led by 3 young men in scoring who it's their first season in college basketball. Between him, Tommy Ivisic, and Will Riley. Super fun. I think this team could definitely make a run at it from the 7th spot, and going to be interested to see that. Andy, I said the other one that I'm really excited about is the Big 12, and this is another conference tournament bracket that's just full of great matchups. The teams that are out of bounds for us to pick from: number 1, Houston. Good grief. What a 2-year run they've had to start their Big 12 residency. Number 2, Texas Tech. Crazy that they're there, man. I cannot believe it. Way to go, Red Raiders. 3, Arizona, and 4, BYU. Again, another team that's risen up. But consequently, Andy, that means 5 through 8 is Iowa State, Kansas, Baylor, and West Virginia. Crazy stuff. Who you going with, one of those 4 or even further out?
Nobody would have told you that Iowa State, Kansas, and Baylor are all outside the top 4 of the Big 12. No, anybody who tells you they would have predicted that is a stone cold liar. There's no way anybody would have thought that would happen. Out of these teams, the one I'm most comfortable taking, I don't think it's a secret. I'm pretty sure it's the team you're going to say. It's Iowa State. They're healthy right now. The majority of the struggles they've had this year were when they were not fully healthy. And Milan Momcilovic missing a good chunk of time really hurt this team. But when they are healthy, the backcourt is so good. Joshua Jefferson has been a tremendous addition for this team in the front court. I'm going with the Cyclones. I think they have a very real chance of winning this tournament.
Andy, I am too. And to put a wrapper on what you just said is like preseason, it was about Houston, Arizona, Iowa State, Baylor, and Kansas. Those were the 5 teams we talked about as the clear-cut top tier in the Big 12. And now 3 of them don't get double buys, which, mathematically, at least one of them had to be the truth for them. But man, it's crazy to think we're there. And now, yes, it has become true that for back-to-back years for Kansas, for the first time since 82 and 83, they have been outside the top 3 in their conference. Nuts stuff. Andy, I'm with you. Iowa State, I forgot to say it. Yes. ACC, Andy, this one is the hardest, I think, not because I'm having a hard time picking between a whole bunch of teams, but because I don't think there were any teams, if we're being honest about it. Andy, as I look at it, I'll just go ahead and say I think it's number 5, North Carolina, but I don't feel good about that. But your other teams outside the top 4, it's like, I don't even feel good about Wake Forest at 4. Like they're not even a quad 1 game on a neutral. They're outside the top 60. And so I think North Carolina is the choice, but they would have to play Duke again in the semifinal. And that's a recipe for disaster. Andy, I think it's Carolina by default. Any different thought there?
No, I was going to say, if you gave me the ACC and the top 3, I would have had the same issues because I'm with you. Wake Forest is not an incredibly appealing team to me. There's 3 good teams in the ACC. There's Duke, there's Clemson, there's Louisville. That's it. If it was the top 4 and on, I probably would pick Wake Forest, but since it's not, I'm going to go with North Carolina by default, only because SMU, Stanford, Georgia Tech, that's 6, 7, 8. I don't see it. I do not see it. I don't really see it with Carolina, but they have enough talent that maybe things go their way. They find a way. They get lucky against Duke. They can pull it off. But I'm only picking them because I think they have a better chance than the others, not really because I think they have a particularly good chance.
All right, Andy, very quickly, give me your choice for the Big East. We got to fly.
Marquette. I'm going Marquette, and it's crazy that Marquette's not top 4. It's crazy that they are not in the top 4, but they're not. You got St. John's. You have Xavier. I know I'm not saying them where you got St. John's. You have UConn, you have Xavier, and then you have Creighton. I think it's Creighton and then Xavier at 4. And then, Marquette, though, plus 600 odds. I think the second best or third best odds in the Big East. Team's very, very talented. Shaka Smart, a phenomenal coach. The only other team I'd have considered picking is Villanova at 6 because they start with Seton Hall and then they get Creighton, whereas Marquette starts with Xavier and then gets St. John. So it's a little bit tougher path, I think, for Marquette, but they're the team I'm picking here.
I think it's actually Villanova gets UConn because UConn's the 3 and Creighton's
okay,
the 2.
Well, in that case, then, yeah, let's go with Marquette.
I like it. Yeah, because Eric Dixon could go on a run. He's leading scorer in the nation. It's a whole thing. That'd be good. All right, Andy, quickly, you mentioned Kevin Keats earlier. He's gone. Love him. Just like appreciate his ability to make light of the situation. His statement at the end literally said, quote, I am officially entering the portal. I'm just proud of him for making light of a tough situation for him. And obviously he's going to land. Utah has hired Alex Jensen from the Dallas Mavericks. Just following what BYU's doing, several teams now hiring not Kevin Smith obviously isn't an alum at BYU, but hiring an NBA assistant. And then Florida State has hired Luke Lux. That is a similar situation to Utah where he is an alum and a current NBA assistant. Andy, we get to punch 2 more tickets tonight, baby, in the SoCon. We've got Wofford, the 6 seed, versus Furman, the 5 seed. Lots of upsets there in the SoCon. That'll be 7 Eastern on ESPN. Ken Palm has it Wofford -1. Tight one there. Sunbelt. We don't have all the teams yet, but number 4, Arkansas State will either play number 3, Troy, or number 2, James Madison, 7 Eastern as well on ESPN+. No Ken Palm line because we don't know who the teams are unless, Andy, that game has gone final while we've been talking here.
Nope, it is not. Troy is up 16, but it is not over.
Okay, there you go. So it's looking like it's probably going to be Troy, Arkansas State for all the marbles in the Sun Belt. Andy, great to be together. It is the busiest time of the year. All sorts of stuff always happening. We're going to be talking conference tournament stuff, looking ahead to projections for the big tournament. Obviously, going to be a loaded week. So stick with us, please, if you would. If you haven't subscribed to the show on YouTube, make sure you do that so you don't miss a single second. We are ever so close to 4,000 subscribers. You be the next one and help us get there. If you've not joined the Locked On College Basketball Discord, we'd love to have you folks talking college basketball all day long. A whole bunch of junkies in there. It's great and it's awesome. College basketball junkies, I should specify, not of the illicit kind. And that link is in your show notes and free to join. As always, we want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild. Pope shouts to Mick Bruins. And until tomorrow, peace.